With WesternUnion.com's 4-star rated mobile app, send money fast virtually anywhere for just about anything. Download the free Western Union mobile app today from iTunes or the Play Store, or visit WesternUnion.com to learn more.
Can you feel it?
Durant for three, bingo! Right down the chute, Kevin Durant.
NBA Lockdown with Bruce Bowen.
Gets it to James. Here's a three for the win. Good! It is good!
The NBA Lockdown Podcast with Bruce Bowen. Along with three-time NBA champion Bruce Bowen, here's ESPN.com NBA columnist Israel Gutierrez.
Welcome into another edition of the NBA Lockdown Podcast with Bruce Bowen. I'm Israel Gutierrez. We've got 3 games to preview today. We start with Pacers and Hawks.
It's the NBA. We're all coaching for our jobs. All I know is we've got incredible support from Larry Bird. We all have high expectations. I'm trying to win the next game.
That was Frank Vogel, who reportedly is, quote, coaching for his job in the wake of a prolonged slide that stretched into the third month, basically, in April. It's February, March, April. They've been struggling, and he can't seem to get his team out of this funk, even though they won their last game 101-85 over Atlanta to even that series at 2. Now, historically, Indiana has a difficult time winning in Atlanta, so it's not as if they suddenly turn the switch and everything's going to be okay for Frank. Bruce, personally, I think it's a little bit unfair to put this on him right now, given, the types of performances you're getting from Roy Hibbert, the personality issues you're getting with Lance Stevenson and him and his teammates not getting along. One of those teammates who he doesn't get along with being Evan Turner, who was reportedly in a fist fight with Lance Stevenson before the start of Game 1. And Evan Turner's a guy that Larry Bird brought in when he traded Danny Granger, who by all accounts was sort of a good guy, a peacekeeper, let's say, a leader type in that locker room. So all that said, is it fair whatsoever to say that Frank Vogel is coaching for his job going into this playoffs?
No, he shouldn't be. This shouldn't all be predicated on him and his job security right now. You look at this team and what they did the first 3 months of the season. Everything was fine then. I don't think coaches just all of a sudden change in those situations, Izzy. It's more about the players, and I think that they need to keep the accountability and the onus on the players as far as them not doing what's necessary, as far as making sure that they continue to play in a way where it is progressive, and the fact that, everything is almost like championship or bust this year for them. Let's make sure you keep the onus on the players, because that's where it should be.
Yeah, well, here's what Paul George had to say about that, because he basically did put it on himself, and he wants that to be the case.
Well, I want to put that pressure on myself, make sure I keep coach here. But that's not something that, we're worrying about right now. If we get the job done, we do what we got to do, everything will take care of itself.
Yeah, if anybody should be especially loyal to Frank Vogel, it's Paul George, who Frank basically gave him the opportunity to shine, said gave him the ball last year a lot more, dealt with him early on despite his turnover issues early on last year, sort of kept plugging away with Paul George, knowing that he had to be the star for this team. So he's going to be able, that he's going to want to support his coach. Now, let's figure out if they can actually do that and get past this series. The Pacers don't win in Atlanta very often, Bruce, and the last game, however, you saw more of the type of defense that the Pacers can play, allowing the Hawks to only shoot 39%. And, Paul Millsap had 19 points, sure, but the guy who gave him so much trouble in Game 1, Jeff Teague, only managed 6 of 13 for 14 points and 4 assists. Did the Pacers figure something out against Atlanta, Bruce, or is this going to be a situation where at home Atlanta might have a little bit more energy and a little bit more urgency?
Well, I definitely think at home they're going to have that sense of urgency and the energy, Izzy. I want to see how this game plays out to necessarily say, hey, the Pacers have figured it out. I think one of the biggest and the greatest adjustment that was made was the fact that Paul George was on Teague. Not from the standpoint that, oh, man, he shut him down or anything like that. It's more about getting him more involved as far as, okay, I got to play defense now because that will help my offense. And the more that I can see more of their players doing things like that, you just see a different bounce in their step. You see a more confident stroke with him whenever he's shooting the ball because I think he's engaged on the defensive end. Now, as far as just Paul George doing that, who else is going to step up? Are we going to see Roy Hibbert protecting the basket like he once had before? It's hard to say, Izzy, because there are so many different variables here that I'm not secure enough in the Pacers to even feel like, hey, they've made the necessary adjustment. They're going to move on.
Yeah, it's hard to say that because, like you said, it was just one game. I mean, they played well against Miami, well enough to win a one-possession contest on March 26th, and they continued their slide right after that. They played well against Oklahoma City to secure that number one seed in their second-to-last game of the season, and then they lost to Atlanta in the first game of the playoffs and looked bad doing it. So you don't know what you're going to get out of the Pacers right now. I will say, a couple of things that were encouraging. First of all, the ball movement for Indiana, 25 assists on 36 shots in that second game. So that's exactly what's been missing. Otherwise, it's just been a bunch of guys trying to take it, 1-on-5, and it's not really working. We mentioned Paul George. I mean, the 9 of 16, that was the first time he'd shot better than 50% since like mid-March. And the 4 steals from Paul George was indicative of him being engaged defensively. The 5 3-pointers from Paul George shows you his stroke is, perhaps back to where you're used to it. But I also think Luis Scola, after a horrendous first game with his 20 points, was absolutely critical for that team because he was the biggest addition for that bench, which was their biggest problem last year. And then you got C.J. Watson out there giving you 28 minutes, hitting a couple of threes and 10 points and 5 rebounds, 2 assists. And 2 steals. That's a great bench performance from C.J. Watson. But last thing here, Bruce, Roy Hibbert played 24 minutes only. So it's not like Frank forced him in there and allowed him to really struggle for the entirety of the game. It seems that's probably going to be the way he's going to go. Not bench him because that's you're going down a slippery slope there. Just sort of, manage his minutes a little bit, play to the matchups, and if he ends up, with a poor game, then, that's fine because they've shown they can survive that. That sounds like a smart strategy, right?
Yeah, it does. And you have to, and with all the speculation as far as, job security for Frank, it's best to go about what's better for your team. Is it best for your team to have Roy Hibbert out there and them stretching the floor and it just seeming like they're picking on him with every offensive possession? If that's the case, then you have to get someone else out there. You have to get your more athletic Yamahimi out there who changes the pace of the game, especially on the defensive end, because he is more agile, because he can match up with some of the small guards in this game. So I think that you have to take a pulse of how the game is going, especially on the road, Izzy. You cannot be stubborn and say, you know what, no, I want to keep him out there because we're going to make this work. It's like trying to put a square peg in a triangular hole. It's not going to work. Even if you force it in, it's going to look odd.
It's going to be terrible. A couple quick notes. Before Game 1, Frank Vogel talked about putting Paul George on Jeff Teague because George Hill is best at getting around screens and sticking with Kyle Korver. And we didn't see them do it much in Game 1. I don't know why. He did it in Game 2. It worked a lot better. And also, you mentioned Jan Mahimi. Frank Vogel said he cares more than anybody else on the team. And he probably does more individual film work than anybody else in the team. So it's probably not the worst thing in the world to have a guy that cares about his work and studies his craft in there more than a guy that's struggling like Roy Hibbert. We're going to move on to the Western Conference with a couple of games tonight also after we take this quick break.
Why are razors so expensive? Maybe it's because those billion-dollar shave companies overload their razors with ridiculous shave tech you don't need. Do you really need a razor with a vibrating handle, a back scratcher, and a laser pointer? No way! So make the switch to DollarShaveClub.com. DollarShaveClub.com sends amazing quality razors and other cool bathroom stuff right to your door for a couple of bucks a month. It really couldn't be any easier. DollarShaveClub.com doesn't waste their money on ridiculous shave tech gimmicks. That's one of the ways they can charge a fraction of what the big shave companies charge. And signing up couldn't be easier. Just go to DollarShaveClub.com and pick a razor plan. They have 3 to choose from. Then, every month like clockwork, you'll get a package in the mail with Dollar Shave Club blades. And they've got other great stuff too, like Dr. Carver's Easy Shave Butter. Thanks to DollarShaveClub.com, you'll never forget to buy blades, and you'll never get nicked up from squeezing one too many shaves out of that last blade in your pack. Say no to the big shave companies and their ridiculously overpriced shave tech. Join NBA Lockdown and the hundreds of thousands of guys who've upgraded to the smarter way to shave. Shave time, shave money. Join DollarShaveClub.com/Bruce. That's DollarShaveClub.com/Bruce.
Coming this summer, the 2014 FIFA World Cup from Brazil. Every goal.
The shot, Donovan scores! The USA leads by 2!
Every save.
Here's Germany up, steal, closer. In the box, the shot is stopped.
Every match. Wherever you are this summer, take the FIFA World Cup with you. It's on ESPN Radio and the ESPN Radio app.
I knew going into this series that we were going to have some very physical games, and it's a lot of one or two possession games. And one thing you know about our team, we're going to keep fighting. We're going to keep playing, and we're going to play hard, and we're going to try to do whatever we can to win the game.
That was Oklahoma City coach Scott Brooks, whose team lost Game 2 at home, 111-105 to the Grizzlies, giving the Grizzlies home court advantage in this difficult 2-7 first-round matchup. Bruce, Scott was talking there about the physical play, and, you know, I don't know how physical it was. I mean, any game that is, even though it was overtime, was a 111-105, seems to be like it was a, pretty free-flowing game, and wasn't necessarily anything where the Grizzlies just pounded Oklahoma City. But there was an area, and I'm going to play some sound for you in a minute about this, but there was an area where I thought the physicality did affect the Thunder, and that was with Tony Allen against Kevin Durant. And, you know, I always think back to that 2012 finals and sort of the frustration with Kevin Durant being that he was denied the ball too easily by defenders, that he wasn't strong enough to shake a fronting defender or anybody that's basically denying him the basketball. And then all of a sudden it's kind of a free-for-all with that Oklahoma City offense, and more often than not that ends up in Russell Westbrook taking a long pull-up jumper, and a lot of that type of stuff happened in the fourth quarter and overtime. Bruce, what do you think about the idea that Tony Allen sort of makes life too difficult for Durant to really take over late in games? I personally don't think I think he'd be able to shake free. I think he'll be able to do his thing once this series gets back into play tonight. But I also feel like Tony Allen's going to have his moments too. So who wins out in this one in the end, Tony Allen or Kevin Durant, Bruce?
Well, I don't think it's that, he's being denied easily. It is a tough job, and this is something that I've seen from Tony Allen in the past, but he recognizes how important his role is for this Memphis Grizzlies team. And, so many times you have a big man, and he'll just stay put as far as, okay, come off of me. And the offensive player, they run by him, and they just kind of go through the motions of hoping he gets screened. Well, after film, I'm sure you're going to see Scott Brooks make a necessary adjustment of going to get Tony Allen. Whereas, KD, wait for it. And you have Perkins or Serge Ibaka go and get Tony Allen. But you got to give credit to Tony Allen, because that's not an easy job, is he, as far as manipulating through different screens. But his aggressiveness, that's what you have to match a great scorer with, is just as much intensity from the defensive end. And I've said this before, offensive players, they don't like guys in their space. And that's what Tony Allen is doing. He's taking up a lot of space of what KD would like to do, and he doesn't have that freedom. And so when he doesn't have the freedom, he tends to act as if, it's harder for him to get those shots that he was able to get before.
Yeah, I mean, that was a great performance by Tony. Not only,
big time.
35 minutes doing a great job on Durant, but he tossed in 8 points, got 4 steals, 3 assists, 8 rebounds. I mean, that's the type of activity you love from him. I wanted you to listen to this, though, because essentially Scott Brooks said that they did a great job of keeping the ball out of Kevin Durant's hands.
Give them some credit. They did a good job of putting their hands on us, and we didn't free ourselves up enough. Those are things that we're going to have to take a look at with the film and get better. I thought in the second half our defense and our offense gave us a chance. Unfortunately, we didn't make a couple of key plays down the stretch. But like I said, give them credit. They're a very good basketball team. We knew that going into the series.
Well, he didn't use names specifically, but when he says, we didn't do a good enough job of getting their hands off of us and shaking free,
yeah.
I mean, pretty sure he's talking about Kevin Durant there, because Russell Westbrook had no issue shaking free. I mean, all he did was dribble the ball and shoot down the stretch. But here's some numbers for you. Durant shooting 36% when guarded by Tony Allen in the series, compared to 56% when guarded by everybody else. In Game 2, that was 4 of 11 when guarded by Tony Allen, Kevin Durant was. So it's pretty obvious he has an effect on him. Now, they're going to Memphis here, tied at 1. And, Memphis is a team that sort of found its game, and it's not just a defensive game. I mean, this is a team that shot 49% in that game, scored 111 points, notched 30 assists on their 43 field goals. That's a huge number for this team, because not only is it just naturally a great number, I mean, 30 assists in a game, even if it's in overtime, is a good number, but this team thrives on its ball movement in order to keep teams from really focusing on Zach and Gasol in the paint. So whether it be a high-low situation, whether it be swinging it around to, a Mike Miller or Mike Conley just penetrating and dishing, that's critical for them. So OKC, I mean, this is one of the toughest 2-7 matchups I can remember. OKC has its hands full, not just because the Grizzlies are a good defensive team. They got to stop these guys, too.
No, absolutely. And I think that Memphis has even more incentive coming into their next game, Izzy, because of the way that they finished that game in OKC. There's always room for improvements, and sometimes you get games as a player and you're like, wow, we were really good. We executed, and you kind of leave it at that. But when you can look back at film session and say, wow, look, we didn't take care of the ball. We didn't shoot that shot well. Or we went to the free throw line and missed free throws. I just feel like that helps in the process of coming out even more focused with the fan support behind you. With the fan support behind you, it helps as far as getting guys going. And they never feel like they're out of the game. And that's the thing. What will OKC do that they didn't necessarily do in Oklahoma, whereas they had the home court, they had their fans behind them? Now I think Memphis can kind of rest a little bit as far as a different type of confidence of being at home, being in their surroundings that they know very well, and you build on that. I think they're going to be more efficient, Izzy. I do understand that they're not just a defensive team, as we like to say at times, but it is the way they play the game. It is the half-court execution. It is taking your time. I think that OKC sometimes they don't run enough clocks. They'll jack up a shot as if it's regular season, but there are a couple of possessions there where they're down 1 or 2 points and you get a quick shot. That's not the time to shoot a quick shot. It's more important to get a solid shot, especially in the playoffs during the half-court sets, as compared to just, I'm going to shoot this one because I was open.
Right. Well, personally, I think Kevin Durant's going to go Michael Jordan mode and just take over a game. One of these next 2 games in Memphis. We'll see if it's games 3 or 4, but I don't think he's going to let Memphis take this one. I mean, this postseason means too much to him now that he's got Russell Westbrook back. All right, we move on to the nightcap. Talk about a series you don't know what you're going to get.
I think we showed when we just play with, force and aggressiveness and play together what we're capable of. It's only one game. Those guys did what they were supposed to do. They came here and got one, and now we got to go, try to get game 3.
That was Chris Paul of the Los Angeles Clippers after his team just pounced on the Warriors, 138-98 to even that series at 1. There's so many signs that point to the fact that Game 1 was the anomaly and not Game 2, that Game 1, because Blake Griffin was in severe foul trouble, and because the Clippers were thrown off their game entirely, and because Golden State was really found a rhythm playing off of that basically hard double team or the hard blitz of Steph Curry on the pick and roll, and that Game 2 was a little bit more than what you'd expect, with Blake Griffin dominating without Andrew Bogut in the middle, with Draymond Green, not just having the bulk of the size to be able to hang with him. Which one do you think we're going to see more closely in Game 3? More of the Clippers' dominance, Bruce, or more of that Golden State grittiness that can stay in a game and pull one out?
Where are they playing, Izzy?
It's in Golden State.
And that is your spot, as I recall. Izzy, that's a hard place to win, especially in the playoffs. I think, especially with the way that they played the last game, Golden State's going to come out with a mission. Mark Jackson is going to get those guys going before the game and say, I don't even know the team that played last time. Now, I don't want to see that group again. I want to see that team that was able to get rid of some other teams last season when we were shorthanded. He's going to give them a miraculous speech, and I just think that group is going to show up for the Golden State Warriors as compared to what took place before. I felt like it was more of a you allow other things to take place as far as officiating. You see Jermaine O'Neal going to talk to the official. There was a lot of complaining in that second game, but the complaining wasn't coming from the Clippers. It was coming from Golden State. Now you get back to the basics of basketball. You play the game the way you know how. Steph Curry, I think this is one of those games that's set up for him to be huge, Izzy, as well as Klay Thompson. So I think those two are going to play huge spots, and I just don't think you're going to have the same execution from the Los Angeles Clippers. I think they're going to get into that mode of yappity-yap with the officials. They're going to miss a call, and they're going to complain. Now, if they don't do that, I'll be totally surprised, but I think Golden State's going to show up big time, Izzy.
I'm with you. I do think that after, a game where the Clippers, other than that third quarter where Steph kind of went off in a meaningless section of the game, coming off a game where the Clippers essentially shut him down for 3 out of 4 quarters or, forever as long as he played, I think Steph's going to take it personally. I don't think they're going to run as much handling the ball coming off of pick and rolls because then, that like I said, they handled that well in game 1, didn't handle it nearly as well in game 2. And, maybe you let Andre Iguodala handle. You let Steph come off the ball, sort of run that dual threat with him and Klay Thompson. Klay's another guy, 20 minutes, 4 shots. I mean, there's no reason why he should be giving you nothing in a game, so especially when so much attention is being paid to Steph. So I do think that those two will improve and show up better. I don't know, however, if this team has any sort of answer for that interior combination of Blake Griffin and DeAndre Jordan. I mean, DeAndre didn't have to do as much in that game 2. In game 1, he was pretty dominant. But, 13 of 17 for Blake. Like, that's zero resistance right there. And you do that and get 35 points in 30 minutes, he's got to feel like he can do anything he wants against that team. And it's not as if the Warriors have been dominant at home. They've lost home games to teams like the Knicks and the Cavs. And the Nuggets. So this is one of those situations where I really have no idea what to expect.
Well, you got to take into account, too, that, Blake was coming off of that game where he fouled out, so you knew he was going to be zoned in as far as the basket and whatever I need to do to really enforce my will against that group. And there wasn't any complaining. Again, I'll say, he got some early calls in that game where guys are starting to, oh, really, ref, you're going to do this to us? That's not about the ref. It's about you competing because the worm always turns. It always ends up going the same way for both teams. It's just at the end of the day, it all evens out. And so I think it was more about Blake's ability to focus and being determined more than anything else during that span, Izzy.
Yeah, well, this is a really good defensive team, and you would think that that in itself tells you that Game 2 was the anomaly and that they can sort of recover and play more like Game 1. However, a lot of that defense was played with Andrew Bogut on the floor, and he's obviously out for at least this series, if not the entire playoffs. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the NBA Lockdown Podcast. For Bruce Bowen, I'm Israel Gutierrez. Enjoy these games tonight, and we will talk to you again tomorrow.
Thanks for listening to the NBA Lockdown. For more great podcasts, visit the Pod Center page at ESPNradio.com.
For his birthday, I want to send my godson to a playoff game. With the 4-star rated Western Union app, I can send him money conveniently from anywhere and make sure it gets there by tip-off. WesternUnion.com is making things so simple nowadays, and right now, they've got a special promotion going on. Download the free Western Union mobile app, and if you're a new customer, you can send money for 0 fee by using the promo code 2014-2014.
One discount per transfer, no cash value, void where prohibited. This offer expires May 18th. Western Union also makes money from currency exchange.